Um, Imagine this. You finally scrape together $200 in your savings account and decide, okay, I'm going to invest this. But the moment you hit buy on your first stock, ETF, or crypto token, you freeze. You feel like you're walking across a financial tightrope. Every little market swing feels massive. Your heart races, you overthink, and honestly, you kind of regret even starting. Now, here's the thing. Fast forward a year or two. You've consistently invested, and suddenly you're sitting on $5,000, $10,000, maybe even $20,000, and you feel almost calm. In fact, making another $500 or $1,000 contribution feels easy. The first $200, that felt impossible. The next $20,000, almost routine. If that scenario sounds like literally you, stick around. Because today, we're going to dig into why the first $200 in investments feels harder than the next $20,000, the psychology behind it, and how understanding this can massively improve your financial journey. My name is Tom, and I spend way too much time thinking about why people struggle with money decisions, even when the math is obvious. If you are someone who wants to grow your wealth but freezes at the idea of investing because you don't have enough money or feel like you're going to make mistakes, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's the thing. Most people assume investing is hard because of math, or because they don't have enough money, but that's only part of the story. Today, we're going to look at both the math and the psychology behind early investing, so you can see why those first few $100s feel like climbing Everest, and how you can flip the script. Look, here's what most people don't realize. The common advice you hear is, invest as early as possible, or compound interest is your best friend, but the advice rarely addresses why the first $200 is psychologically the hardest. People hear the math. If you invest $200 a month at 7% annual return, you could have $20,000 in 10 years. Sounds simple, right? Here's what most people don't realize. It's not the math that's stopping you. It's the psychology. The first $200 feels huge because of three things. Loss aversion. Studies by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman show that losses feel twice as painful as gains feel good. Losing $10 on your first $200 feels like a heart attack. Unfamiliarity. You don't have experience seeing money work for you. Your brain interprets this as risk, even when the math says otherwise. Perceived scarcity. When you only have $200, it feels like a lot. Every dollar matters. So the first step feels terrifying. Now, contrast that with $20,000 invested. Losing $100 feels almost nothing. Your brain has adjusted. You've built familiarity, and your confidence grows. Let me hit you with some stats. According to a Fidelity Investment survey, 40% of millennials say they delay investing because they don't have enough money. Yet, the same study shows that millennials who invest even small amounts consistently outperform those who wait by a factor of 2x over a decade. Here's a concrete math example. Imagine you invest $200 today, and the market averages 7% annual return. In 20 years, that single $200 grows to about $770. Not life-changing, right? But here's the kicker. If you then start investing $500 a month for the next 10 years, you end up with roughly $100,000. The first $200, practically invisible. But without taking that first step, you never reach $100,000. See? The math rewards consistency over size. The scary $200 is actually the most important. Here's what most people don't realize. The brain reacts differently to small versus large investments because of mental accounting. This is a fancy way of saying we mentally separate money into safe and risk buckets. $200, that's real money you earned. Your brain screams, don't risk this. $20,000, that's money you've already committed to investing. Your brain says, this is already in the system, just keep going. There's also the status quo bias, our tendency to stick with what we know. The first $200 represents a break from your status quo. That's scary. Every subsequent deposit feels easier because the brain is now trained to accept the new norm. Here's an analogy. The first $200 is like jumping into cold water. Your body screams at you. But once you've swum for a few minutes, the water feels fine. And by the time you're swimming laps, you barely notice the cold. Now you might be thinking, but Tom, I can't afford $200. But if I lose it, I need to save more first. Here's the truth. Investing isn't about having enough money. It's about starting the habit. You don't need $1,000, $5,000, or $10,000 to see the benefits. You just need to start small and stay consistent. Let's do a quick example. $50 a month at 7% annual return becomes $12,000 in 20 years. That's $50. That's like skipping 2 dinners out a month. Small sacrifice, huge result. And regarding risk, yes, markets fluctuate. But the alternative, doing nothing, is a guaranteed loss in purchasing power due to inflation. $200 sitting in cash today is worth roughly 20% less in 10 years if inflation averages 2% annually. Here is where it gets really interesting. Once you invest consistently, something magical happens. Your brain rewires. The first $200 is about fear. The next $2,000 is about familiarity. The next $20,000. That's confidence. Familiarity breeds calm. You've seen the market dip 5 to 10% and survive. You start mentally owning the process, not obsessing over individual dollars. You start to understand compounding emotionally. Every contribution now feels like adding fuel to a snowball, not risking your livelihood. Look, this is why so many people never start. They let the fear of the first $200 block the snowball effect that could eventually become $20,000, $200,000, or even $1,000,000. Let's break it down numerically. Scenario 1. Small start invest. $200 now. Add $50 a month for 12 months equals $800. End of year 1 total equals $1,000. Approx 7% return included. Scenario 2. Scaling up. Continue $200 a month for 10 years equals $27,000 invested. 7% average annual return equals $38,000. Notice something? That first $200 accounted for less than 1% of your eventual portfolio. Yet psychologically, it was the hardest. Now, scenario 3. $20,000 milestone. You've invested $20,000 over years. Market dips. $2,000. 10%. Panic? Minimal. Loss aversion effect is smaller. Confidence is higher. Contribution becomes routine. This math shows why starting small is both psychologically and mathematically optimal. Here's how to make that first $200 feel less scary. Automate contributions. Out of sight, out of mind. You don't feel the $50, $200 you invest monthly. Start with familiar investments. Index funds, ETFs, or a low-fee robo-advisor. Don't gamble on high-risk speculative assets first. Visualize growth. Track your portfolio growth monthly. Seeing compounding works wonders on the brain. Reframe. Fear. Understand that early fluctuations are normal and expected. Your portfolio is a snowball, not a sprint. Here's what most people don't realize. The first $200 builds the habit, not the wealth. Habits compound faster than money. Fear is rational but temporary. Once you invest again, your brain updates expectations. The mental barrier decreases exponentially. By the time you're at $5,000, $10,000, or $20,000, it's almost effortless. Another shocking insight. According to a Morningstar study, investors who start with small amounts but remain consistent outperform late starters by 50-70% over 20 years. The psychological advantage of starting early translates directly into higher returns. Let me make this really relatable. The first $200 is like learning to drive a stick-shift car. Every motion feels awkward, scary, and risky. By the time you have $20,000 invested, you're on a highway, hands-free, cruise control on. You trust the system. You enjoy the ride. Or think about exercise. The first 5 push-ups hurt. You sweat, groan, think, why am I doing this? But once you do 50 push-ups consistently over months, it feels routine, and the gains are real. Investing is exactly the same. Here is what I want you to do today. Stop obsessing over having enough. Pick a small amount, $50, $100, $200, and invest it today. Automate contributions. Watch the snowball grow. Celebrate the habit, not the dollar amount. Look, the first $200 is scary. The first $500 is easier. The first $20,000? Effortless. And every step compounds, not just in money, but in confidence, discipline, and financial freedom. So here's my challenge to you. Take action today. Don't wait for the perfect moment. The best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is right now. If this video gave you clarity, motivation, or just helped you realize you can start investing today without fear, hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and share it with someone you know who is scared to start their investing journey. Remember, the first $200 is the hardest step, but it's also the most important. Once you take it, everything else gets easier. I'm Tom, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. But here's the thing. Understanding your psychology around investing is just as important as understanding the math. Start small, stay consistent, and the $20,000 or even $200,000 will take care of itself.